Welcome in to another episode of Building the Pride. I'm your host, Drew, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Mike. Mike, how are you?
Fantastic, Drew. How about yourself?
Good.
Good. Good. Yeah.
Things are happening in Combine Week, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah. Season's kicking off into full throttle. Well, it's starting to rev up, I should say. We're not full throttle yet.
This is pretty much where the off season begins, as far as I'm concerned. Like, we'll have the combine, then we'll do free agency. Like the new league year will start, extensions will happen, we'll do the draft, and then there's a really long time before anything of note happens. So
because then you get OTAs, right? And then you get some of those kind of like off-season workouts, and then eventually we get into some sort of preseason training camp time frame. Indeed. It's going to be a bit before real football happens.
Yeah,
but this is where the roster construction. This is where we build the pride, as it were.
That's right. And that is what we're going to, nice segue. That's what we're going to be doing today. We're with our off-season roster mock. We're going to do a complete off-season, everything but a mock draft.
Yeah.
We're going to do a complete off-season where I'm going to get your opinion on what the Lions should do. But we'll start.
Yeah, I was going to, before we get to there, let's, there's not much going on around the NHL, the NFL. The NHL has been fantastic. By the way, the NHL knows how to do an all-star weekend. They had the Four Nations tournament.
That's not an all-star week. That's not an all-star weekend. That's an international country-level event.
It wasn't. It is an NHL event. It was essentially the replacement for their all-star game.
That's ridiculous.
And they did the all-star right. Back in the late 90s, maybe it was early 2000s, they did a format called North America versus the World. So all the all-stars that were born in North America, so you're Canadians and Americans typically, right? Played against all the Europeans. So it was kind of cool because it's almost brother against brother, and that like Steve Yzerman was playing Sergei Fedorov, because they were on different teams, having been born in obviously different continents. So that was pretty cool. And this was kind of like a step up from that, where it was the U.S., Russia, Canada, and Sweden were the four nations in the tournament, and it was really good. It was really, really good. I got sucked into the final game. Canada ended up beating us in overtime. Connor McJesus scored and did what they needed to do. Detroit fan, man. This is what the NBA needs, a mid-season Ryder Cup situation. Yeah, this was pretty good. It was actually, so the final game between US Canada was the most viewers for any one NHL game in history. So even more than like Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final, this had more viewers, which is crazy to think about. It's like saying, a conference, the final game of the NFL season or whatever, or the Pro Bowl gets more viewers than the Super Bowl. So they definitely did things right, but we're here to talk football, not hockey.
Are we ready to talk football?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about football.
All right. So Khalil Shakir, wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills, secured a 4-year, $15 million a year deal. Good for him. Aiden Hutchinson is running in his recovery process. He put out a video of him running at the Lions facility. It's good to see that he's on track. Hopefully he doesn't push so hard that he sets himself back at all. He's that kind of person. I get the feeling that you have to restrain them when it comes to Aiden. It's about healing, not about, you can't just push the progress bar past the maximum. What else? As far as like off-season stuff. Okay, so let's talk about what Danny just said. Brad Holmes said he's most likely not getting a big name edge rusher because it's hard to do, and that other teams don't
essentially what Brad said too, right?
Yeah,
which is it's really hard to do this.
It's really hard to do. Other teams aren't going to be like, "Oh, did your star edge rusher go down? Well, here you can have ours." Like, And he did call the Zadarius Smith trade with Cleveland one of the most contentious trades that he's ever been a part of.
Yeah.
But like also Andrew Berry today, yeah, like just what Detroit fan man said, like Andrew Berry today said, we don't have any interest in trading Myles Garrett, which is
Yeah.
Myles Garrett can scream at the sky until he goes hoarse, but like if Cleveland doesn't want to trade him, they own his rights in professional football. Like,
and it could just be a standoff, right? Because he could say, "I'm not going to play for you," and just hold out.
sure,
And they could say, "That's cool. We just won't pay you, and we're also not going to trade you. We will fine you. You get no money. You get no trade, and we could just have the standoff." Usually, one of them caves, and lately it's been the teams because they would rather not have. They'd rather
it's
have the salary case. Yeah, the players have always won, right?
Well, the player's not going to win. So like
Win,
so
right?
the player's not going to win because they don't have any leverage in the situation. They can because
just not play.
it doesn't benefit him. It doesn't benefit Myles Garrett to not play. So like you will accrue the fines, right? And then not get what you want, and then you don't accrue another season in the NFL, which counts towards things like what you can be paid in your next like in contract negotiations. So there's nothing like they designed this system so it doesn't benefit the players, so it prevents them from sitting out. So what will probably happen is at some point in this offseason, Myles Garrett and the Browns will talk and they'll say, what can we do? You know, is this about money? Is it really about the rebuild? What do you want? Because if it's actually about the rebuild, he might push. He might push for as much as he can to get out. Like,
you just lay it down. I will not. Like under no circumstances will I. And then they're gonna be like, okay, well now we know.
Now, in my opinion, this is from Cleveland's point of view. They got to push this past June 1st with him. So the reason I say that is he's much more movable as far as their cap is concerned next season. So like also like if they are actually in a rebuild and they want to acquire a new long-term quarterback, if they are trying to accrue draft capital for flexibility in next year's class, the draft after this upcoming draft, you want picks then. You don't want picks for this class.
Right.
You know, you want picks a year out. So it benefits them to get at least past the draft so that they might have more flexibility on the cap and for when they get picks. So I don't expect anything to happen with, of course I could be wrong, but like I don't expect anything to happen with Myles Garrett before or during the NFL draft. So
yeah, I would expect the same thing. At some point, they're gonna figure it out. Most of the time, it happens, right? The player and the team eventually go, okay, I will follow you on Instagram again, and they figure things out.
Yeah, you know, and I do believe that almost anybody in the NFL, there's a price for them. Just most teams aren't willing to pay the price.
Yeah,
you know, but if a team came in with a trade offer that really told Cleveland, like, oh man, we should probably consider this.
I'll give you 3 ones.
Yeah, I mean, which is the most you're allowed to.
About that.
Most teams have to trade. Sounds like they didn't want to trade. But a player upset with the Browns, you're right? Exactly. Well,
yeah.
I mean, there's a reason their team nickname is the Factory of Sadness. I mean, it's just they haven't performed very well for a long time. And 20 years ago, their team went to Baltimore. So I mean, like even the Browns don't want to be in Cleveland, right? Yeah. So is this a smokescreen? I don't think so. I think that if Myles Garrett was traded, he'd be quite happy because he's more than likely going to go to a team that's wins more and probably give him an extension. Yeah. So I think there's a lot to win for Garrett. So I guess the question is like, where does Cleveland feel like they can get commiserate value? And when because they're in such bad straits with their cap, I I just don't think it's there's so like if you're getting there's one thing to accrue draft picks, it's another to accrue players. Like, but like the third worst resource in the NFL is your cap space. Is it important? Yeah, it's important. Is it as important as players or draft picks? No. So like the only thing that Cleveland's really looking for right now this year is cap relief because they're the second worst in the second worst situation in the entire NFL behind New Orleans.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another thing that happened, Mike. The cap is projected to go way up.
Yeah, because we were by 22 million bucks or something like that, which on average, from what I understand, the previous several years was around 12 to 15 million per year, and this was a bit more than that.
Yeah.
And I messaged you them like, hey, look at this. He's like, well, maybe our odds of getting Myles Garrett go up, but that doesn't make it the odds that we will get them, right? So just because our odds went from 5% to 10% doesn't mean like we're likely, right? We're not over that 50-50 mark. Cap is less of a concern with it now than it was before. But ultimately, Brad's not shown that he's going to be the biggest splash in free agency and making a monster trade like this. So I still think that while our odds are better now that we have, more cap to play with, that doesn't make them good odds. Like I still don't think he's going to do. I'd love it. I'd love to see him and Hutch on the other side. But I'm certainly not holding my breath on it.
Exactly. So like the salary cap should be roughly $7.5 million more than what they were predicting. So that does two things, in my opinion. Number one, it means that Cleveland has $7.5 million less that they
less
have
debt,
to deal with.
cap
Right.
debt.
So like if that is the difference between like the scenario that was originally speculated that in order to trade Myles Garrett, you would have to make the following moves to offset his dead money, would be that you would have to restructure Deshaun Watson, which means he has to stay on the roster for another year. You don't want that. You would have to restructure Denzel Burke, one of their top paid players, and you would have to cut
Denzel
right tackle your Denzel Ward.
Yeah.
Denzel Burke is a current cornerback for the Ohio State, and they both went to Ohio State. So, and you'd have to cut your current right tackle, Tyler Conklin, in order just to make the money be 1-to-1 on both sides. Yeah. So you trade Myles Garrett, you lose another player in Tyler Conklin. You have to keep Deshaun Watson for an extra year, and you have to front load a bunch of Denzel Wards.
Yeah, his cap number this year is $24.5 million.
Right. So
all doable.
Not great.
Right?
Not great.
Like, especially the restructure of Denzel Ward is doable.
Yeah.
But the question is when you restructure, you're basically throwing that cap down the line. And if you're, do you really want to do that for a cornerback? You want to do that for a quarterback, right? They're the most important position in the game. But do you really want to throw that into keeping a cornerback around an extra couple years past their due date? So it'll be curious.
Yeah.
Danny says apparently Ward has previously said if Garrett's out, then he is too.
So this is the other thing, right? So
Ward has far less power over that. Like,
so if you're Cleveland and you're already I kind of want to compare this hypothesis to what we see going on with the Rams right now.
Yeah.
But if you're Ward and they trade Garrett and you're like,
yeah,
I want out too. Okay, then Cleveland could look at we're truly shedding players for cap.
Yeah.
And instead of it being like, oh, we're going to retool a little bit, we're going to drastically retool. And like a lot when you drastically retool, people get fired. So I don't think that the people who are likely to be fired want to do that. So, but if you trade,
unless they get buy-in from ownership right from the start.
Well,
like here's the thing: if we get this domino is going to fall too. But if we do push both of those dominoes over, we could get a couple firsts for Garrett and probably a second or a third. Denzel Ward might be a first round pick for in compensation, maybe more than that. And now all of a sudden you're looking at what we got. We got a haul for Matt Stafford, and we got what three first round picks for him, essentially,
We
right?
got we got 2 firsts and Jared Goff
Okay, which you could consider a first
and
round
a
pick
third.
of sorts, right?
Yeah,
But
he was the
that
number one overall
kick-started
pick.
our rebuild. Yeah, exactly. Right. You could consider that still, even 7 years in. That's the equivalent of an extra, first round pick. But that kick-started our ability to rebuild. So the Browns might go, well, if I can get 2 firsts for Garrett, a first for Denzel Ward, probably an extra second or third along with the Garrett thing. Maybe I'll even, get a player in there. Ownership could just say that might be worth it. Like I don't want to rebuild unless I can get a kickstart rebuild. So I'll be curious to see if one domino takes another and they're willing to play dominoes.
So L'Jarius Sneed, who was a cornerback for the Chiefs 2 years ago, who got traded to the Titans, was traded for the Titans got Sneed and the 7th round pick. The Chiefs got a 3rd round pick and so basically L'Jarius Sneed was traded for a 3rd round pick and they swapped 7th round picks.
Okay.
So like
You have to go back to Jalen Ramsey before a cornerback gets
well,
traded for
Denzel
one.
Ward, not
Right.
Jalen Ramsey.
Right.
So
So you're probably getting a second or third at most.
yeah, there's going to be some give and take there. So like
Yeah.
there's very few people in the NFL that are worth a 1st round pick, unfortunately. So, but one of them could be Matthew Stafford. So,
Great segue, Drew.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. So, this is a very weird situation to me. So, I'm going to try and outline it the best that I've heard.
Yeah.
A year ago, Matthew Stafford is and this year as well played really well.
Yeah.
Has played really well, and he went to the Rams because he didn't have much or any guaranteed money left on his deal, and he's being paid. His cap number is like in the mid-20s.
Yeah.
So far below
like
market value for him.
Yeah. Real low.
Real low. The Rams are getting a great deal when it comes to Matthew Stafford, as far as the money and the quality of his play. And he approached the Rams management and said, "Hey, let's rectify this a little bit. Let's throw some more money my way. I think that I've earned it." And he's right. And so the Rams and Stafford negotiated last season right up until the day that training camp started.
Yep.
And they settled on giving him $5 million, which is not a needle mover as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, I'd take it. It's a needle mover for us, but not when you're already making 30.
Sure. I would take
Right?
$5 million.
Yeah.
You could hit me with a car if you wanted to. So like
it might take that.
Matthew Stafford, maybe not so much. The guy's made lots of money.
Second most career earnings of all time, by the way.
Interesting. Well, he was the last QB, I believe, to take part in the previous CBA structure. So he was guaranteed like $50 million.
I believe Aaron Rodgers has made the most career earnings of all time. And then Stafford was second. I think Tom Brady was third.
He did forego a lot of money so that they could give it to other people.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
So then they basically, so like from what I've heard from like Jordan Rodriguez, the Athletics LA Rams team reporter, Stafford and the Rams management basically said, let's table this until this offseason.
Yeah.
Okay. So this offseason, what has happened with the Rams? They had a good playoff run. They were really close to going to the NFC title game. And since then, the Rams have said, we're going to trade Cooper Kupp, who Matthew Stafford really likes.
Yep.
Now I think he is making almost as much money as Matthew Stafford, which is crazy. But they're both somewhere in the mid-20s, I believe. And there's been no
Stafford's
movement.
guarantee salary is $23.5 million.
Gotcha.
No, I take that back. His guaranteed salary is $4 million. right now.
Okay.
Stafford's is for guaranteed.
Guaranteed money. So there has been no contract extension. They are trading one of his favorite players on the team. And now they have said, Matt, your agent, Jimmy Sexton, can go and canvass the NFL to see what your value is if there were to be a trade. So he has not requested a trade.
Correct.
He
wants to be
in
in
LA.
LA.
He wants to be in LA.
He just wants to be paid what he's worth.
And they have said, why don't you have your agent canvass the NFL?
Yeah.
So I look at this two ways. This is as 50-50 a course to take on Matthew Stafford as I think that you could possibly take. So if they agree on a number, okay, welcome back with open arms. But
yeah.
Cooper Kupp's gone.
Yeah. Well, they say he's gone, right? They said, we're going to trade you as soon as possible. And that was a month ago.
Because I don't think there's any interest.
Well, I mean, not his cap number is pretty rough. So, like,
right.
is Cooper Kupp actually going to be gone? Is my question, and I'm not sure he will be. I think they may have to cut him, and at that point, they could re-sign him back if they wanted to. I remember Green Bay did that with one of their who was their star linebacker. They ended up cutting for cap reasons, and then signed him right back like a week later.
Was it Clay Matthews?
It might have been. So, I mean, they could do something like that with Kupp, or they might restructure. I wouldn't be surprised if Kupp is a Ram next year.
I would be totally surprised.
I mean, it's not likely, but I also wouldn't be super surprised.
Hey, we told you we're going to trade you. Hey, the trade didn't happen. Hey, then we cut you, and you can go anywhere. But, do you want to come back for less money?
Yeah, I don't think they would cut. I think they would restructure. They would have to restructure because they take a bunch of dead cap.
Restructure him.
I know that's what I'm saying. I don't think they would cut him. I think they would just restructure him because if they cut him, they take a bunch of dead cap and then they would sign him again. Wouldn't make sense, right? They would have to do a restructure.
If they were going to do that, they would just restructure him and not say things like, "We're going to try and trade you immediately."
Yeah.
So, like, to me, that says we're moving. So look at the Rams. Look at the Rams two or 3 years ago.
Yeah,
they had guys like Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford on the team, right? And this was in the middle of the like trade the picks for players, haven't had a pick in the first round for almost a decade era, right? Now look at the Rams team right now. Like no Aaron Donald, no Von Miller, no Jalen Ramsey. They've told Cooper Kupp that he's going to be traded, and like I think honestly it's 50-50 on Matt. So like are the Rams in a tipping point where they're looking at their roster and saying we're going total youth movement?
Yeah, so we're going to rebuild essentially. We're shutting our playoff window for the next couple years. I mean, so last I saw, Stafford wants $50 million.
Oh.
Give it to him. That puts him at 10th highest paid in the NFL. And he is playing better than that. He would be paid less than Dak Prescott, who he's better than, Jordan Love, who he's better than, Trevor Lawrence, who he's better than, Tua Tagovailoa, that he's better than, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray. He would be Kyler Murray actually would be just under that. So, but Jalen Hurts and Jared Goff, he would be paid less than all of those guys. And frankly, he's better than all of those guys.
And if the Rams wanted to, they could.
Yeah, just give them the 50 and
so
just
they don't
keep
want
that
to.
playoff with. Well, I don't know because I think what they're trying to do is find out like is 50 actually the number. Go out. I'll let you go do the salary market study, and then you can come back and we'll see what that number looks like. And if that number's 50, I think they're going to be like, all right, that's the 10th highest paid. That's not absurd. They're not in a terrible cap situation, and you keep their play. They were a couple plays away from the conference championship game, and honestly, I think they probably beat Washington and probably beat Kansas City. They were a few plays away from potentially a parade, and I just don't think you shut that down for a few $1 million.
That's a lot of dominoes to knock over.
Sure.
So
And
here's
if
my
we
response.
proved anything, Washington can just come out and win against teams that they shouldn't be beating anyway, right? So
Right. So if they have so like I'm looking at over the cap right now, and they are
yeah,
sitting in like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15. So they're right in the middle of the NFL right now. Today, according to over the cap, they have 44 million plus. So in cap space. So if they wanted to sign Matthew Stafford and they have the cap space, and you said, Matt, can you go to 48 for us so we can just make the cap work or whatever? 2-year, 3-year deal, something like that, like 3 years, $135 million or whatever it is, spread it out how we want, add some void years on it. Like, if they valued Matt Stafford as this is a cornerstone, yeah, we want to go two more years with this core like this, the deal would be done. They've been bickering about this for over a year now. Like,
yeah. I think how
they
much
just
of it
don't
is
want
smoke
to do it.
screen, and how much of it is actually drama within the organization
I don't know that
versus there's nothing to talk about, right?
I just think that it's like they're not. I mean, like we have seen teams for all the quarterbacks that you named, Kyler Murray through Tua Tagovailoa, just be like, here you go. Eventually, you get all your money,
Yeah,
right? So, like Matthew Stafford has been asking for that money for over a year, and they have not given it to him.
yeah,
And in the meantime, they've said, we're going to trade one of your wide receivers, and we're going to give your agent to canvas the NFL
yeah,
for what they think you're worth.
yeah.
I mean, that's just not a
So
lot.
he's essentially a holdout, but not holding out, right?
So that's a nice way to put it, I think, because like he's not saying I'm not going to play or you have to trade me,
Right,
but they're also not saying, well, here's the money that you wanted.
right.
So like, if
Effectively a stalemate.
right,
Like
so if
we're in a staring contest right now. We're gonna see who blinks and see if we both blink at the same time.
so there's two teams that I think could be in the Matthew Stafford conversation, and that's the New York Giants and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I
And
also heard Minnesota.
I think that's ridiculous. I don't have any idea why anybody would say Minnesota. Like they
Well,
currently have Sam Bradford, who had a good year, his best year ever. You drafted
yep,
J.J. McCarthy 10th last year, and you have Daniel Jones as your backup on the roster. So in this situation, you're gonna trade for Matthew Stafford, let Sam Darnold walk, and then not play J.J. McCarthy through his whole rookie contract. I just think it's a
yeah,
ridiculous
yeah.
scenario.
Well, I'm just saying. I heard. I'm not saying it's likely, but
Yeah,
I've heard that
it's
was a
it's an awful
scenario.
scenario. Yeah, I don't know who's putting it out there, but that seems like some aggregator shit. So like, but I do think the Giants and the Steelers could be real teams for
Yeah,
Stafford. So Pittsburgh gives him the best chance to win. And would they part with the 20th pick to say, I mean, a couple of years ago, they spent the 20th pick on Kenny Two Gloves.
right.
So, I mean, like, this is way better, but are you willing to give the contract, right? I don't know what Pittsburgh's probably in worse spot than. Nope, they're in a little bit better spot. They got $60 million to play with. And then the Giants are $4 million above the Rams. So like if Pittsburgh put together the 20th pick or a couple of day 2 picks or a day 2 and a day 3 pick and took the contract, I wonder what Los Angeles would do.
Yeah,
I don't know what I don't like. You certainly are not replacing Matthew Stafford with somebody of a similar quality.
right. It's a
So
step down, but gives you some cap freedom.
they draft pretty well,
You
like,
think they had 2 Rookie of the Year candidates this year and 1 last year?
yeah. So I mean, like,
They're like, oh, that's why first round picks are good to have.
yeah. So, if his wife stays in Cali, that's funny. I listened to her podcast the other day where she was talking about Cup and what they
Yeah,
wanted. I have a hard time believing that like Kelly Stafford would go off into the media on her podcast or an interview and say something about Matt's career that they had not discussed.
Yeah.
So like on her podcast on February 6th, she said, Matt wants to be in LA. We love LA. We love LA. We want to be here or whatever. But saying all that, if respect's the most important thing, to Matt is what she
Yeah.
said. And like, she's like, I'm ready for an adventure. So like, I have a, to me, that came across as husband and wife sat down and had a conversation. And it's like, we're okay with saying this in the
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's true, I don't know. Kelly seems certainly adept at being like, we're going to try and get some leverage back here. Let me use my podcast to try and help us get some leverage back. Okay.
Yeah.
Like that's fine. Don't have a problem with it. But like, I also would not put shit out into the media as a bluff.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get called.
I mean, at the same time, like Kelly's also said, I wish he would retire. Like, so, which is fine, and I totally get that from a spouse that would rather have their husband back instead of 12 hours a day at the facility, getting up early and all doing all those kind of things and being gone on weekends and playing on holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that kind of stuff. I totally get that. So um, I think she takes a lot of crap just because she's being outspoken and she's a sports player's wife,
Yeah.
which is kind of unfortunate. I don't think she's ever said anything super outrageous or anything like that. But being an outspoken female sometimes is frowned upon, but in the in male-dominated sports.
Sure. So all of this basically to say, like, I typically bet on whatever team you played on last year. That's the team you're playing on next year.
Yeah.
However, I am surprised at the steps that either have been taken, granting the agent opportunity to go canvas his value, or not been taken, giving him money.
Yeah.
In this particular scenario. So
Yeah.
I think it's
You go do the salary study. Tell us what you find.
Yeah.
We're not going to put the resources toward it. So so that's a good segue into around the Lions off season. So what does it look like for us? And that's kind of where we're going to go for the next probably 45 minutes is who do we have as free agents? Who do we let walk? Who do we keep? What positions do we look to fill? What holes do we have in which positions that we want to look in free agency and identifying the draft?
I'm so glad.
So there's a lot to offseason other than the draft, right?
Yes, much. So, and here's the reason why we're doing this. I was in a discussion on Twitter with some Lions fans, and they were adamant that a certain position was the most important position to address as of the day of the conversation. And my thinking was, I don't know that that's.
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
I'm curious which position it is because I can't think of anything that said a glaring has to be addressed first need.
Sure.
I could see guard being a position of need. I can see linebacker depth, cornerbacks, a second edge rusher on the other side of Hutch, but none of those are like absolutely this is the thing that is just a no-brainer has to be done first, right? So what were they arguing was the no-brainer has to be done first, our number one priority, no ifs, ands, or buts.
Well, so I think the best way to say this is that they thought the most immediate need was interior defensive line. Okay, so why do they think that?
Interior?
Well, interior defensive line. So we're talking Reader, McNeil, those guys.
Yep.
So let's go through it just real quickly.
Yeah.
Reader, one more year left on his deal. I think he's in his early 30s or just turned 30. Not a guy that eats up a huge number of snaps. and not a guy that you're expecting to play 17 games for you each year. Okay?
Yep.
He is a nose tackle. His job is to play two gaps every snap that he's out there. He is there to stop the running game, to control the point of attack. Can we just
cheap.
So let's say
$13 million, right?
Yeah, he's also cheap. Can we just assume Aleem is going to start the season on IR? I think that's a good assumption to make, man. So let's say Aleem McNeil starts the season on the injured reserve, right? So he's going to miss the first 4 games. That's a great assumption to make. So Aleem and Mekhi Wingo both had ACL tears. So let's also assume that Mekhi Wingo is going to miss the first 4 games of the season. So Levi Onwuzurike is a unrestricted free agent. He had his best year of the year this last season. The previous 3 years, all hurt. Wasn't sure if he was even going to play in the NFL anymore. Okay. So if you want a starting 3-tech on your team at interior defensive line, you either need to sign a Levi Onwuzurike, sign someone in free agency, or draft somebody. Okay, so that's
right.
That's valid.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the other DTs. So Reader, he's not hurt today. 1 more year left on his deal. You drafted Broderick Martin 2 years ago. You gave him 1 year to get his body ready, and then you hoped that he would take some snaps this year. And he impressed absolutely nobody. So he's got a lot to do this year in order to indicate that he'd be ready to take even a portion of what DJ Reader is doing. Then the other guys that you have on for depth there, mainly Kyle Pecco and Pat O'Connor, are unrestricted free agents, so you would have to bring them back. So you have a starter, an unreliable backup, and nobody else at the position.
Right.
My argument was guys like Kyle Pecco, Pat O'Connor, Chris Smith, Miles Adams are all guys that are likely going to be re-signed to this roster on like vet minimums.
Yep.
Maybe not. I mean, some of those guys are probably not.
Maybe not minimum, but maybe a little bit over minimum, right?
Yeah, or a little bit over, or maybe someone else decides that they like something in Kyle Pecco and he gets a chance to play more in Cincinnati or wherever. You know,
so if minimum's 5, they might make 7.
Sure.
Right.
Like the minimum's like 1.2.
Well, I'm just saying, yeah.
I'm with you. You know, so like, okay, I can understand why you think the cupboard's bare, but like, we're going to go through free agency, and then we're going to balloon the roster up to 90 guys. So, I mean, I don't think that even if you bring in UDFAs, you're going to have people at those positions, right? Brad's not going to go into the draft and be like, we have no one at 3 technique. That's not who he is. He's going to have somebody signed to the roster before the NFL draft that can start and play 3 technique that he feels comfortable with. That's who Brad Holmes is. So, and then if you don't believe me, go back and look at their rosters in March before each of the seasons and see if there's any they could draft this guy, but they have someone that can start there. And if you listen to Brad Holmes's interviews at the Combine, you know, he's basically said, like, when asked, like, what about depth? What about finding guys? He names people like Kyle Pecco and Chris Smith, Pat O'Connor, as guys that you can pick up and have on the roster that you can trust to get the job done, right? So this kind of goes back to our Kindle Vilder debate from a couple of weeks ago, right? Like, is Kindle Vilder somebody that you're stoked to have out playing against Justin Jefferson in like a week 15 game? No. But so why is he on the roster? Because the coaching staff knows that he knows at least what they're trying to do out there, and they have some level of trust in him. Same thing with guys like Chris Smith, Kyle Pecco, Pat O'Connor. So I think that the people that I was talking to were like, well, those guys didn't get the job done. And my response was, Yeah, because they and 17 other people were hurt. It's not just that like Kyle Pecco got hurt or wasn't a starting caliber nose tackle like Ali McNeil is. It's just that he's the kind of guy that is a backup on a Lion squad. And so like the response that I got was, yeah, but he couldn't start for most other teams in the NFL. And I'm like, sure, but like that's the definition of a backup.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Which
you
is
go ahead.
which is what we're looking to fill, right?
Right. So like if you have backups that are starters on other teams, like you're great. You're doing so much better than the rest of the NFL is doing. So I just thought it was a little premature to say right now interior defensive tackle is the clear need. And like Ali McNeil might miss 4 games, but he's probably going to play 13.
Yeah.
And that's great,
So, which position were you thinking would be higher than that? Like, and maybe this is the transition into what we're going to talk about today is where are we needing to go?
Sure. So I think there are 2 positions currently that, so as Detroit Fan Man indicates, there are quote unquote bigger needs currently on the roster, but Brad will have them addressed before we go to the draft. And that is edge rusher and corner. Okay. So why do I say corner? Carlton Davis is an unrestricted free agent. That's it. Number 2, edge rusher. Drew, they have Zadarius Smith. You can put him across from Aiden Hutchinson. Problem solved.
Yeah.
That's not how the Lions think. The Lions don't want Aiden Hutchinson on one side and another dude that does what Aiden Hutchinson does on the other side. That's not the format of the defense. So, and I know, okay, we have Kelvin Shepard now as our D coordinator, not Aaron Glenn. I'm willing to bet that Kelvin Shepard stays closer to what Aaron Glenn did and his player preference.
Yep.
Then like, oh, we're going to throw all that shit up in the air and 52 card pick up it. And like, I'm going to do something that's crazily different. So like the dude that they want across from Aiden Hutchinson looks like and plays like Marcus Davenport. Okay. 6'5", 270, who can push the pile, push the pocket and maintain an edge. Good against the run. And then that basically fronts a wall that Aiden is supposed to crash into and get the quarterback. That's their theory. So it doesn't work if you put a guy that does the same thing that Aiden Hutchinson does, across from Aiden. So I look at Zadarius Smith as Aiden Hutchinson's backup. Can you start him? Yep. If he's the best edge rusher on the team, week 1, will they play it? Will they start him? Yeah. I'm just saying that's not necessarily what they would want in a perfect world. So can they re-sign Marcus Davenport? It's a unbelievably deep class at defensive linemen in this draft. Like they could probably pick get someone to start in that spot in the 2nd or 3rd round. It's so deep at defensive linemen. So we're going to start talking about like, what would Mike do? Yes. So Brian is correct. So it's my belief that Brad Holmes will have a team in place that can take the field week 1 before they go into the draft, so that he has as much flexibility as he wants during the actual draft. So
there's a lot less pressure on getting it right.
Correct.
If you have all right, everything goes wrong. That's right. We're still good, right?
We got him. I trust player X to go out there and at least do most of the things that I want him to do.
Yes.
Right? Like no one's going to look at Marcus Davenport and be like, world beaters. Hutch and Marcus Davenport, that's it. Done. But you can trust that Marcus Davenport can do what the defense wants to do on a play-by-play basis. So, that's what I'm saying. Okay.
All right. So let's talk. The depth, roster depth right now,
Sure.
positional depth. This is on ourlads.com. I tried to go to Detroit Lions page, except they don't have a depth chart there right now. So that's a
Interesting.
bummer. So
Yeah.
this was the one that I found. So we've got, I can zoom in. No, apparently I can't. One more zoom in was just one too many, apparently.
Right.
So, wide receivers, we got St. Brown, Jamison Williams, and Tim Patrick as our top three. Allen Robinson as a depth guy, Antoine Green, which I think is still on his rookie contract as a depth guy, Khalif Raymond as a hybrid depth guy. Like his real value for the Lions is not wide receiver, it's the return game and special teams. But hey, he can catch a ball when you need to throw it to him, so that's pretty solid there. And I believe all of these guys, these top six, are expected to be back, right? They're still under contract.
So let's take a look. So the guys in green are currently unrestricted free agents.
Okay. So I think Tim Patrick is one of those guys that we want to take a look at. He's our contested ball guy. He's the guy that's going to go up and get it. God, I'm so tired of these freaking ads popping up. And there's just nothing I can do about it. So I think he's kind of a no-brainer, and he's not particularly expensive. So I think he'll be back. What are your thoughts?
So the way that I want to do this is I'm going to pose that question to you, and then I want you to tell me yes or no. So
yes, I think he'll be back.
Okay, so the contract projections that I've seen for Tim Patrick is like 1 year, $1.7 million. So almost just above the minimum.
Yep.
I know. So so you want him back. Yep. I would want him back at that number. I would pay him a lot more than
I'd double it and be okay with it.
Okay.
$3 million for what he does for us, I think is still a steal.
So Netani Muti, this hasn't been updated yet, but Netani Muti, this guard here, third string guard, he's also been re-signed for this upcoming season. So he's on the roster.
Okay.
So let's talk about since we're talking about guards, let's talk about guards. Yeah. Kevin Zeitler. Per Eric Schlitt at Pride of Detroit, Kevin Zeitler is on pace, he's heard, to come back. So they paid him something like $6 million, maybe a little bit more this last year.
Right.
The number that I have seen for him to re-sign would be 9.8 fully guaranteed.
Okay.
So would you be willing to give $10 million to Kevin Zeitler for 1 more year?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then Kevin Zeitler is coming back, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So far we've
find. Go ahead. I'm gonna do this in a way that does not keep popping up ads. So keep talking.
Okay, so let me address the chat here just real quick. So Fan Man says, do you guys like the recent Khalif Raymond cap casualty cut prediction? $6 million for a returner with a deteriorating offensive role who is a fantastic locker room guy. I'm actually amazed that the Lions have anybody that they would be like looking to cut for salary cap reasons. Like with the cap going up $7 million more, like there's Khalif Raymond right there. Like the Lions did nothing, and the way that the NFL increased the money means that they can just absorb Khalif Raymond and don't have to think about it. And they even get $1 million, on top of it. So like they like him, right? They gave him an extension. I think they really, really want the type of special teams ability that he brings. And like he has a speed that is not replicable by many other people. And like he is JMO's primary backup. So like I think $6 million for an all-pro returner who's your what is JMO, the Z receiver, something like that.
I think he's
that's a great price. And I like, as you said, like he's a fantastic locker room guy. That's what they're all about.
Yeah.
That's like I cannot imagine them cutting somebody like Khalif Raymond who's good in the locker room and fulfills very specific roles for them, and who has never been a problem for a handful, like $5 million in cap space. I'm not I'm not directing this towards you, fan man. I'm just saying that like wherever whomever put up the content that you got that from, those are the people that I'm saying like you guys are nuts.
Yeah.
Like the people that are like Khalif Raymond could the Lions cut Khalif Raymond to save cap space for the reasons that they outlined? That's insane. Like to me, like that, to me that
It's
says
$6
whoever
million bucks.
doesn't know
Like,
who the Detroit Lions are. Right, it's $6 million.
You're saving what, a 0.5% of the cap?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I'll go over the cap just real quick. So Khalif, let me see. Khalif Raymond, to that. Where are you, buddy? Oh, you want to talk about ads? Whoo.
Oh yeah, jeez. I can't imagine it's too expensive.
Found him. He is going to cost next year 2.1% of the cap. Just not enough. It's just not enough to sideline report article. You know, you should tell them we've got beef, because that's nonsense. That's just like content creation for the sake of like clickbait and shit. Like as far as I'm concerned. No. Like we're good, Detroit fan man. We're good. I knew where you were coming from. So okay, right. So we're re-signing Zeitler. We're re-signing Zeitler. Tim Patrick's back in the fold. Would you bring back Allen Robinson on like a minimum contract?
So what is the contract right now?
It's like
Allen Robinson. Cap number 820,000. I would say probably yes. I would give him a shot, sign him to a league minimum. He may not make the roster.
Yeah, he's I wouldn't even bring him back. Like this is a good spot for like a late round pick. Antoine Green's coming back from his injury last year, UDFA, something like that. So like this would be a spot I would be looking at to get like another young guy to develop like a Tim Patrick, and be on a 4-year deal. But
I think that's what you identify in the draft for sure.
Right.
But I think that having him on the roster, even if he doesn't make the final roster, I think it's probably not a bad way to spend $1 million, less than $1 million.
Sure. I mean, like veteran, but he's a practice squad player. So I mean,
most likely, yeah.
So Dan Skipper, the cult of Dan Skipper. Your sixth lineman.
Yeah, he was not impressive when he was playing with us, other than the touchdown, right? Yeah. Honestly, I think that gave him an extra year. Like we were so upset about all that stuff. I think that endeared our fans to him, and that gave us a little bit of rosy glasses. But when you actually look at his play, it wasn't particularly good. So I would let him walk.
Yeah, so would I. Like to me, you trade a future pick, a pick from this upcoming class last year to draft Gio. He at least needs to be able to get out there on like special teams regularly and like line up in a game, get into the situation, start to become familiar with it, that type of stuff. Like you know, and like yeah, so like fan man makes a good point. Like, you know, Skipper and Gio could have a camp battle. Yeah, that's true. I mean, my issue with that is that like I think you just need to put the dudes out on the field. Like, I don't know that Dan Skipper's important enough to challenge as like use him as like another thoroughbred to like challenge Gio to get the best out of him. I don't know. I just want
potentially drafting a guard anyway, right?
Right.
For depth and future.
Right.
And if that's the case, do you really need Skipper to do that, or is Gio and guard to be potentially drafted going to do that stuff for us.
Right.
And if you don't end up drafting a guard, my guess is Skipper's not going to be like, "Oh man, we really missed out on keeping Skipper." Like he'll be accessible pretty much.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would probably do is I would probably be like, we're not going to re-sign you. I'm keeping Gio on that contract, and I'll bring in like a UDFA tackle that like will probably be on the practice squad. And there's like you could bring in like some 6th-year tackle from like the ACC or like a group of 5 school. Like Western Michigan has a couple offensive linemen that could get drafted in the actual draft this year. Like bring in one of those guys to like a young guy trying to make the roster and competing. I think is still gonna push a guy in a developmental role like Gio.
Well,
So
I think even to like fan man, he's like I bring Skip back in to give him a new someone to compete with. I think what we would probably do is say, hey, we appreciate what you've done here, Skip. I'm not going to bring you back, but I wouldn't mind putting you on a practice squad. I want to give you the opportunity to test free agency. If you can't find a home, we'd love to have you on the practice squad.
yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it just because I mean, like the Lions have drafted these developmental guys ever since the new regime has been in place, and like I'd like to see some of them work out. I'd like to see Sione Vaki or Giovanni Manu or Broderick Martin or somebody work out.
Yeah.
I just want to see it. So Teddy Bridgewater, is he going to supplant Hendon Hooker as your backup quarterback next year?
I don't think so. I don't think I would do it, and I'm not sure that the Lions will either.
Yeah, I don't think. I think he's going to be a backup to like the Jets because of like Aaron Glenn's there or something.
I mean, and he didn't ever. Did he even? Well, he took what 3 snaps or something.
He didn't play. I mean, he wasn't even on the team the whole regular season. And then like they get to the playoffs, and he was like, "High school football's done. I'm coming back." And then they were like, "Cool, we'll get you as our 3rd quarterback." Oh, Goff needs a breather or whatever happened to him. Like you need to come in for 3 snaps.
You got his bell rung.
Yeah, and then it's like, and then like they demoted Hooker for the game. So I mean, like, I don't think that he's the Lions' backup next season, but like, I don't know that the Lions have a number 2 quarterback on the roster.
Well, I mean, I think they do. I think it's Hooker, but I'm not sure they consider him a legitimate number 2. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to snag somebody like a Daniel Jones type. Like, hey, I've been cast off. Like a Trey Lance, Daniel Jones, one of those other guys that also never really got the opportunity, but could probably come in cheap.
I think they should draft another.
I think they should as well.
Yeah,
probably not high.
We're saying no on Bridgewater.
We're saying no on Teddy.
Sorry, all right, Teddy. That's the offense. We're bringing back Patrick, Zeitler, Robinson, Skipper, and Bridgewater are going to seek their fortunes elsewhere.
Well, so my question since we're still on offense, we haven't switched yet. Are there any of these guys that you would cap casualty cut and just not keep around?
Nope.
Nope.
Not a one of them.
Like, do you think Green sticks around?
Yeah.
You think so? Just because of the rookie contract deal, Craig Reynolds.
So Craig Reynolds is an exclusive rights free agent. They can say whether or not he's allowed to negotiate with other teams. So it's almost like he's not a free agent. I mean, those guys almost always come back. So like, I think Craig Reynolds is on the team for at least this upcoming year. Same thing with Zylstra. Same thing with Awashika. But like, I'm not cutting guys like Graham Glasgow or Khalif Raymond or Brock Wright or anybody, because most of these guys, the Lions have already demonstrated like, hey, we see something in you that at least gets you on the team.
Yeah, even Glasgow, they went out and got to come back, right?
They went out like, these are the guys, like these are the guys, like they're not the like because you fit this role or because you are this position. It's this is who you are as a football player. You're like, play to the whistle, run through the wall, like intangibles, like they care about that stuff. And every one of those players has to meet that threshold first before they go to like, oh, you play guard, like, oh, you're a
Yeah.
punt returner, that kind of thing. Like, so
So
like
do you? Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
I just think that like so like the word that I would use is like they vetted all these guys already. And
So
like they've vetted them, and most of them they have given contracts to them, whether they're piddly little contracts like 1 or 2 year deals, or like you brought back Graham Glasgow on like a 3 year deal for like under $10 million.
so do you think that things like this? Glasgow was our worst offensive lineman,
Yeah,
57.2 grade, in a contract once the
was
ad goes away, for the love
yeah.
of God, uh, at $7.5 million. Do you think they go, you know what? I don't want to spend $7.5 million on a 55 graded player who got worse kind of as the year went on. Um, that's the only reason why I think he might be a cap casualty, because I just don't think the cost benefit is in his favor.
So this is the thing that I think keeps him on the roster. So like we brought back Kevin Zeitler, right?
Yep.
So okay, so like I think Christian Mahogany and Graham Glasgow go into next year, and there's a camp battle for the left guard spot.
Yep.
So let's just say Christian Mahogany wins that battle. So now you have a guy that you're paying $7 million to that is not a starter, but you know what he is? He's a dude that can play any position on that line and knows what they're doing and has
Yeah.
played on that line. So he's
Yeah.
the primary backup for Frank Ragnow. If something happens at the other guard spot, he's played both of those. And remember, he also filled in for Decker when Decker had to take a couple series off this season, and they didn't know what else to do right away. And then
Yeah.
eventually Skipper came in, but like on the next play when they couldn't substitute, Glasgow just jutted over to tackle and took a couple snaps there.
Yeah.
So I mean, like the dude can literally play all 5 spots, and like
Yeah.
I think he would be an
His
amazing
versatility is enough to keep him around
right. His
for one more year, probably.
right, yes, we're
Unless he completely shows out. If he shows out, you keep him around for longer. But if he sticks around for one more year as the backup and is just still a 55 grade, he's gone.
right. So I
Right?
mean, and that's what you're drafting for this year. Like you're drafting a year ahead because like
Yeah.
Graham Glasgow is like 32 or 33 years old, and like coming to the end of his extension. So you're planning ahead.
All right.
Okay, so
Let's talk D.
we have a
What
lot more
about the D?
choices.
There's a
here.
lot on the D.
A lot more choices here. Okay, the money we signed Marcus Davenport this last season for $4 million. Then he got hurt after playing like 3 games. So he's not gonna get the same money that he got. The money that I've seen projected for him is $2.2 million. You're bringing back Marcus Davenport for $2.2 million. Yeah, me too.
Yep.
Okay, here's the first big one.
Yes.
Yeah. So Carlton Davis, you traded a 3rd-round pick for him. You restructured his deal. You are paying him, I think, 9.5, whether he's on the team or not, because of his void year. So the contract projection that I have seen is just under $14 million. So 3 years, 13.5, something like that. You're going to end up paying him just under $41 million. If that's the contract, are you going to pay Carlton Davis just under $14 million on like supposedly like a 3-year deal?
Where are we at left cap wise? Because I've already paid Zeitler, right?
So I've done these things. So everyone that we've talked about or will talk about, you can pay them what I'm telling you, and they'll be under the cap.
Okay, I would do that then.
Okay.
I think to me, when we look at this, Terrion Arnold was a rookie. You don't expect a rookie to show out. Sauce Gardner, those kinds of things, those are aberrations, right?
Yes.
Now, granted, Terrion Arnold was a 1st-round draft choice, but that's still not expected. So I would say he is the thing that is helping our secondary by far the most. So I think that we would make that a priority.
Yes. So we have reports where like Carlton Davis has said that Dan Campbell is the best coach he's ever played for. You have Dan Campbell saying that like Carlton Davis is exactly the kind of corner that we want in this defensive scheme, which I have to assume until I'm shown that they're not going to play it anymore. They're going to run again under Kelvin Shepard. So, I mean, the way that I look at it is if you re-sign him at 13 and you were going to pay him 9.5 because of his void year, you get to push that money back out. So, like, are you going to pay Carlton Davis $4 million more than you would have to pay him to not be on the roster to come back?
To be on the roster and
I
be
mean,
the
that's
best
just
player in the
ridiculous.
secondary?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's back.
He's back.
He's back as long as he wants to be back.
So here's three more guys that I think we got to talk about before we get. There's a lot.
Yeah, fan man, there's a lot.
Well, because we had to sign a lot of dudes to play. Levi Onwuzurike, hurt for 3 years. He had his best year this last season. He played just under 650 snaps. He had solid numbers if you want to consider him a backup 3 technique. If your backup 3 technique is playing like he played this last year, that's everything you could hope for.
Yep.
So I have seen contract projections that stem anywhere from $4.5 million to $16 million for Levi Onwuzurike. So if you're going to pay him closer to 16, you're paying him as a starter.
Yeah. If I can get him under 10, I think it's a no-brainer yes.
Okay.
Over 10, I think I have to take a look at the other priorities on the defense.
Yeah, so like I guess I'm in the same spot, to be honest. So like I think that like Ali McNeil, Christian Wingo are going to be back. He's had 1 good year out of 4. It was a good year and it was at the right time. But if I have to pay him close to $10 million, like I'm paying Carlton Davis 13.
Yeah.
Like eventually
give him 8 with incentives.
Right.
Right.
So, but do you have to sign him because you have no other you would lose your first, second, and third choice for the first 4 games of the season at 3 technique. So
I don't think you have to sign him, but I think I think he's good enough where he's worth the investment.
Okay.
Even if it's a 2-year deal at that 10, 11 million bucks a piece, with half of it guaranteed.
Okay. Ify Melifonwu, I'm really torn because when he's on the field, he makes a lot of good stuff happen, but he's almost never on the field. So I like the kid. I think he's a good backup safety, but I also think safety is like not a difficult position to replace. And like
we've got our 2 starters, right, in Kirby and Branch.
Yes. So
he's not much better than Brandon Joseph,
who's not on the team anymore, who got a DUI and they cut him and they said, no, don't come back. So to me, like this is a great spot to open up for a backup safety on day 3.
Yep.
You know, you want to get another special teamer, someone that does 1 or 2 things in your defensive scheme that you like. Okay, we're going to burn a 5th round pick on, I don't know, some kid.
There's also free agency.
Right.
Right. So we can get a iffy level free agent. I mean, because again, you know, where was he at? A 54.5 grade. So he's mediocre at best. You can get that on the free agency market pretty easily. Mediocre is really easy to come by. So now, granted, mediocre that already knows your system there's a bonus to that.
That's a big deal.
But I'm not sure he's going to be a priority. And I'm not exactly sure what the safety market looks like right now and whether there's, 60 grade guys, 65 grade guys that are out there that it would be accessible.
So remember, you had guys like Justin Simmons and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson last year waiting around and like wave 4 of free agency trying to find a team.
Yeah.
You know, like I think that there's cheap help to be had.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you just may let him sit on his couch for a while. Like,
Right.
I mean, I don't think there's going to be a bidding war over Iffy Melifonwu.
Highly unlikely. Derek Barnes. He's kind of a backup Mike linebacker. They asked him to play Sam linebacker, which is their pass rushing linebacker role. Been in the system for 4 years. He was part of that original draft class. They didn't extend him last year when he became eligible. Then he got hurt. Pretty decent, though, when he plays. What do you do?
Well, yeah, he only played a couple games, right? Then he got hurt. But I think the reason why they didn't extend him is because obviously his rookie year was not good.
Ew.
And then he was average. So that's not the guy that you're gonna be like, oh, I'm definitely gonna keep this guy. He's average. He's meh. But this past year, in the 3 games that he played, he went from meh to all right. You're playing pretty well.
Right.
So I think it's more of a onus on us to re-sign him now. That he's not necessarily an onus, but like I think we're more likely to sign him now because his play did improve, albeit in limited action. So, but he's a guy that you can let walk pretty easily, and you can find average to slightly better than average linebackers pretty easily in the offseason.
So those are the guys that I really want to talk about. Like every other one of those guys in green on the defense is a minimum 1-year deal. You can sign them or not as you please. Okay?
Not.
I understand. They will.
Not.
I am betting. I would bet my house that they bring back Khalil Dorsey though. He's their number one.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Coverages.
Even Al-Qadim Muhammad played pretty well. I think that they probably bring him back as a depth guy.
Yeah. So here's the next thing.
The others.
Here's the next thing. So okay, so we do the combine. We re-sign our own players. We basically bring back most of the guys that started for us last year. What's funny, fan man, is I saw something today from Pride of Detroit that said, "Don't be surprised if Turner's back on the roster in a depth capacity, obviously." But like, so basically, we're re-signing our own guys. Okay. I don't have anybody that the Lions should actually go out and target in free agency because I just don't. They don't target guys in like the first or second wave of free agency. They look for those Marcus Davenport style, Emmanuel Mosley style deals to bring in certain guys.
Right.
So I'm not gonna try and predict a third wave free agency signing for you to say yes or no about. So we've spent 1.7 on Tim Patrick, 10 million on Zeitler, 13 on Davis. We re-signed on Wuzarike, but not if he's more than 10. So let's say 10.
Yep.
You want to bring back Derek Barnes. I can't imagine that he's going to cost much, like $4 million, $5 million a year. Where did you come down on Melifonwu?
I'd probably let him walk.
Okay. So,
or at least let him sit on his couch until we can figure out what we do in the draft.
Excellent. So here's the next thing. And I know what you are going to say. So that's free agency for the Lions. So now we can do one of two things. We can either talk about extensions for players when the new league year hits, or we can do the mystery box.
Okay, the mystery box.
Yeah, you don't know what
the
it
mystery
is.
box. I don't.
Yeah. So which
is that
one
the draft?
Which one? Nope, it's not the draft. So which one do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about player extensions, or do you want to talk about the mystery box?
Let's talk about player extensions.
Okay, so the new league year hits. So now we're in the middle of March, right?
Yep.
Okay, so guys, here are the guys. Aiden Hutchinson, Kirby Joseph, Jameson Williams, Josh Pascal all become extension eligible.
Yep.
In the middle of March. You're going to extend Aiden Hutchinson, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
There's nobody more important on that defense.
So Fan Man says that he could be a $40 million guy. So that would be $6 million more than the highest paid defensive end in football, who is currently Nick Bosa, who is also like $4 or $5 million more than the next guy. So that would be unbelievable money. So the number that I have seen for Aiden Hutchinson is $34 million a year over 4 years.
Yeah. Oh, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I'd do 36. I
Sure.
think he's going to end up at 36.
Okay, let's say you sign him at 36 for 4 years.
Yep.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay. So who's the next best player to you, Kirby Joseph or Jamison Williams?
Kirby Joseph.
Okay, here's where I think we're going to have a real discussion, because the contract that I have seen projected for Kirby Joseph coming off of an all-pro season where he led the league in interceptions is $23 million a year, which will make him.
He's going to be the number one again.
He's going to be the highest paid safety in the NFL. Are you going to make Kirby Joseph the highest paid safety in the NFL?
Gosh, that's a tough one. I think I do, if I can handle the cap. Like, I don't know where we're at total cap hit, because I'm just spending money left and right. I feel like I'm in the federal government. I'm just spending money whether I have it or not. So I don't know. I would sign Kirby Joseph if I could. That said, if that was I can't keep Davenport or I can't keep Davis and do Kirby Joseph, I'd be like, all right, cool. Sorry, Davis. I'd rather have Joseph.
Sure. So, okay, so we're re-signing. So now we're to Jamison Williams, who I think is more valuable to the team than Josh Pascal.
Yes.
Are you going to re-sign or extend Jamison Williams? I don't even have a projection for Jamison Williams on what he might make on an extension. So what would you pay Jamison
OTC
Williams?
has a valuation of 14.9 million for Jamo.
There's no way. Are you telling me that he's going to get the same amount of money that Khalil Shakir just got from the Buffalo Bills? Okay, so I'm on Spot Rack, and they finally have a prediction up for Jamo.
Okay.
Will you give Jamo 3 years at $19.7 million a year?
19 point. So basically $20 million.
Sure, just say, if you want to round it to 20, that's fine.
Yeah.
3 years, 60 for Jamison.
I don't think I do.
Wow. See, I'd rather have Jamison Williams than Kirby Joseph.
I wouldn't, for a couple reasons. Number one, I don't think our scheme. I don't think he fits our scheme in that he's not a focus of it. He's not the thing that makes our scheme work. Our quarterback is really great at the short and the mid. He's not really great at the long. The thing that Jamo does is the long. Take the top off the defense, run those 9 routes, and get open deep. I think that is such a small percentage of what we do, and it's not a thing. Even the threat of that, quote unquote, isn't what makes our offense tick. And I'm not sure I would spend $20 million a year on a player that isn't absolutely critical to our offense. If he was 15, I'd do it, but I wouldn't do it at 20.
So I think the exact opposite of you. I think that
okay, interesting.
I think that Kirby, from what I have heard from scouts, Eric Schlitt at Pride of Detroit. It is the threat of Jameson's speed that keeps safeties back when the Lions are facing them. So, like, one of the things the Lions like to do is when they come to the line, if they see the safeties are back, they can check to a run, right? So now maybe the safeties come up after that and they know the check's happening, but at least you have to make them change. You have to make a defensive realignment, right?
Right.
So, like, I think that even if he has the seasons that he just had for the next 3 or 4 years, I would pay $20 million for that season. I view wide receiver as much more valuable than free safety. And
I do too. I just
right.
don't think he meets that. Like, I don't think he's high enough end wide receiver to do that.
And I think that he is.
Yeah.
So he has one ability that you simply cannot replicate in sports, and that's speed. You cannot. If he is off the roster, they don't have. I mean, you have Khalif Raymond, but you do not have someone who is as fast as Jameson Williams. And like, I think about Brad trading from 32 to 12 to draft him when he was hurt. Like, I'd be really surprised if the Lions. So, but you're the one that's making the choices here. We're not going to extend him for
right. Don't forget it.
So okay, so he's going to be on the roster next season, and you still have the option to pick up his 5th year, the year after that, if you wanted to. Josh Paschal.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, he's a guy as far as I'm concerned. He's Kaminsky. He's Marcus Davenport. He's a guy that you can find almost anywhere.
And are you talking about? Are we extending them before the season?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you let JMO see what he does for a season, and maybe you extend him or take his 5th year. Or if he really lights it up and he truly becomes like, okay, this is the thing that really makes our team tick, then I think maybe you do the 20 million. But I don't think you do it before the season. He needs to show that he can stay on a field for a full season. He needs to show that he is the player that really makes our offense unique, and that they have to play us differently because he's on the field. And yet you can't teach speed, but there's a lot of really fast dudes coming out of the draft as well. So you could find another speedster wide receiver if that's the one thing that you cared about.
Yeah, see,
I would give him the year, right? And say, all right, well, I don't extend you now. Let's see how your year goes and go from there. And maybe you pay him after that. If he just comes out and has 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns, all right, cool. Give him the 25 million bucks. DFN. Oh, Detroit fan man.
Yeah, I would pay Hutch, and then I would pay JMO next. So, a little bit slight different take there. That's fine.
Yeah.
So, and we're not going to re-sign Paschal. Okay, so now
correct.
Kirby and Hutch's extensions are not hitting the cap until, and like the way that the Lions like to do these extensions that they've done for everybody so far is that like year 1 of your extension is not crazy, but year 2 of your extension is big. So like usually they build like you get extended and then your big number hits 2 years later. Yeah. Is typically how they've done that. So like we sign Hutch, we sign Kirby Joseph, their big number is going to hit in 2 years. All right, let's do the mystery box. Myles Garrett becomes available. Okay. So I asked you earlier or maybe later last week what you think is a fair price for Myles Garrett. Your response was either 2 1s and a 4th or 2 1s and Hendon Hooker.
Yep.
Fine. Either way. I'm going to stick with the draft picks. The Lions make this trade. The Cleveland's finally ready to move him. They say, we will take 2 1s and a 4th round pick for Myles Garrett. Okay.
Yep.
Here's the problem. this is the only problem that I see with trading for Myles Garrett at this point. I don't care about the draft picks. I don't care about what he's making right now. I don't care about what you extend him at. What I care about is the 2026 salary cap and whether or not the Lions have a plan in place if they were to trade for Myles Garrett for the 26 cap.
Right.
So in the 26 cap, Jared Goff is going to be making just under $70 million. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, and Ali McNeil all are now firmly into their extensions. And the money that we have paid to Carlton Davis is also going to be taken on, there. And like the salaries for Taylor Decker and Frank Ragnow also go up. So we will also in that year have to worry about extending the 2023 class. So that's Brian Branch, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs. Like we have all these guys now that we are like,
right.
Now you have to make decisions on.
Right.
So,
but to your point, those people we have to make decisions on, but their big paydays are not going to be that year, right? They're going to be a couple years later, right?
Correct.
So the decisions then, but the expense will come a little bit down the road.
I should also mention that when you trade your first round picks, you're going to get back somewhere like $2.5 million on your cap because your rookie pool goes down. So you are going to get a tiny bit of cap relief there, which is every little bit helps. So the Lions,
the 26 cap situation for the Lions.
So Jared Goff is worth 2 to 3 players, no matter depending on how you look at it. But if you want to click in the little drop-down menu and go to restructure potential, you can restructure his contract and save $40 million. This is the only way. So if you re-sign all the players that we re-signed, like Zeitler and all those guys, and trade for Myles Garrett, you have to restructure Decker and Goff in order to give the Lions $20 million or something in cap space to sign their rookies, have money during the season for like player elevation, so the way that you like to use the practice squad, and that kind of stuff, and just like normal team management shit. Okay.
Question for you.
Yeah.
For over the cap, and it says team cap space, right? 27. Is that based on what the cap is this year? Because we don't know what the cap is. So that actual number will probably be $15 to $20 million higher. So just something to think about as we're talking about what does it look for our cap.
So I want to answer both questions, chat and you. So I'll do you first. So
I should be the priority, by the way.
You should be. You are the priority. You're my priority. So
sorry, Brian.
The cap projections aren't quote unquote in effect until the NFL actually tells teams what the cap is supposed to be for the new league year. They're going to have to tell teams that before the new league year starts in the middle of March, so that teams like the asshole Cleveland Browns and New Orleans Saints can fix their shit, right? So almost every other team's under the cap right now. So the Lions are going to have cap that rolls over. They're going to have $23 million that rolls over from last year to this upcoming season. So they're adding $23 million in cap space. I thought that they were only going to get a percentage of that from the way that I read how that works. It's apparently they get every dollar. So the Lions are projected, whether it's on Spot Track as opposed to over the cap. Over the cap has them at something like $45 million, I think. Closer, maybe a little bit closer to 50. Like Spot Track has them in the mid 50s for next season. So if they're correct and it's up to 277.5, it could even go higher. It could go $4 million. It could be up to 281.5 potentially. 277.5 is the conservative projection. So like you might have another $4 million in there that we don't know about quite yet. Right. But if you end up getting that, the Lions can spend $30 million, no problem, on next year's cap this offseason and not care about it. So, I mean, like some of that is absorbing contracts that are stepping up in tier, adding new money, Carlton Davis, like that kind of stuff, re-signing a bunch of guys to the active roster, having money for your rookie pool, that type of thing. And they've traditionally wanted money to spend in season to manage the roster.
Right.
So we got to build in a little cushion. So, but if you restructure Taylor Decker and you restructure Jared Goff and you plan out the contracts that you're going to sign these guys to, so like spread it out and have void years or whatever you want to do, you can get and absorb Myles Garrett and have it not be a problem on the cap in any way, shape, or form next season. The season after is the tough part. That's when you're going to have to make it like, are you going to write Jared Goff a $40 million check to bring down his cap number? Like, are you going to restructure a couple other guys?
Yeah.
Are you going to let some dude walk? Like
so
that.
You're talking about 27?
26.
Oh, yeah.
So this is 26 is the year where, like, I think
we've married Jared Goff at this point.
Huh?
We've married Jared Goff at this point.
We are married to Jared Goff. Goff.
So a restructure makes complete sense.
Yes.
As something that they would be willing and able to do.
Right. So now I'm going to address the chat.
Okay.
Are you saying Brad screwed up by finding too many guys who are too good too quickly? Good problems. Am I saying that is a problem? Nope. And I don't think anybody in the NFL would say that. I think
screwed up is not what he.
Right. I understand. Right. There's a little humor I'm reading in that phrasing. So, but there is an actual. He has accelerated maybe the rebuild by being as good as he is at identifying talent. He's probably shaved a year or two off where most teams would project to be because they've hit on so many players. So there is a crunch of money because if they are going to sign their guys, which they've already started to do, then I think that that money is concentrated. So Brad today was talking about, like, you're going to have to make decisions, but like the only decision that I think I've ever really seen them make is they let Jonah Jackson walk out into free agency last year, but they didn't draft Jonah Jackson. He's not their guy. I mean, he's on the team. He played pretty well. I liked Jonah Jackson when he was here. Was I sad to see him leave? No.
Right.
He was covered.
Average. He was a little above average.
Right. And like in a year where like 6 or 7 guards got 15, 14, 16, 17 million dollars a year, they signed Kevin Zeitler for 6. So like, good job, Brad. It's not so I don't believe that Brian's poking fun at me, but like I do think there's a very real component to what he's saying because you got so much talent so quickly that like who's going to be the odd guy out? If there is no one who's going to be the odd guy out, you're paying a lot of money in a very truncated amount of time. And if there is a guy out, I have no way to guess who that guy is because I don't have any experience with Brad Holm letting those kinds of players go yet. Yeah. So I don't know what he would do. So in that area, I could only guess at what I would do, and that's a mistake because Brad Holmes has consistently been better at this than I have. So I don't know. Like $23 million a year, if that is the number for Kirby Joseph, seems really high. You know, like it's to me what that's saying is that he has to do what he did last year time and time again in order to be worth it.
Yeah. And it's going to be tough because all you can go by is history and you can't.
Right.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. So then you're going to go.
I would open that mystery box if I could. I would. Yeah, right. I would open that mystery box and I would do what I could. Because here's my thought.
Yeah.
Obviously, a healthy defense this past year in the playoffs. We didn't have 18 guys on IR. That's a game changer for our defense, and obviously things probably work out differently, right? I think having Aiden Hutchinson back obviously is a huge boon to what we could do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if we were to get Myles Garrett, not only do I think that it can raise that Super Bowl window even wider for this next year and puts us on a path to more more likely winning a Super Bowl, I think, assuming we can extend him a couple years, right, and it's not just a 1 year or 2 year rental, I think he could be a linchpin to a dynasty of. I think we could, if we had him and Hutch for the next 4 years and the pieces we've already talked about doing, I think we could do two or three Super Bowls in the next 5 years. And that's what I'm excited about. Like, I'd love one. I would really love three of them over the next 5 years, right? And I think he is a player that is good enough and dynamic enough and impactful enough to be the guy that can do that with us. And that's why I would go all in on that and say, all right, well, our first round draft choice, well, are we going to take a depth wide receiver? Are we going to take a depth this, that, depth that? Because all of our starter spots, for the most part, are filled up. So I would rather give somebody else two depth guys, which is what we're going to end up with those picks, for Myles Garrett. 100 times out of 100, I would do that. So that's why I'm like, oh, please, Brad, please do this. I don't know if he will, but when I think of what does that trade really mean, first rounders sound really impressive, but they're depth guys. Like, do you really want? Are you okay with trading two good backups for Myles Garrett, especially when the cap might have some, flexibility for us? And I'd say I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I'm very happy with the if Brad Holmes just continues us on the, like, we're gonna just draft people and develop them, and we're not gonna make any huge waves. Like, I mean, I'm here for it.
I'm good both
Like,
ways. Like, it's obviously been successful the last
it's
3 or 4 years, right?
it would be also amazing to watch Aiden Hutchinson and Myles Garrett for 4 years. I mean, that would just be
Yeah.
amazing. So,
How do you not win a Super Bowl? Injuries.
well, I don't know. I mean, like,
don't say that out loud, but like,
the Kansas City Chiefs have the best quarterback, in the NFL, and probably he's been the best quarterback in the NFL for almost a decade now, and they don't win the Super Bowl every year.
well, not every year, but they've won 3. They've been there
Yeah, they've won
5.
3 out of he's been a starter now for 7 years. So I mean, like,
so
if you
he's
have
had
the
a higher rate than anybody else in NFL history.
Sure, right, exactly, and
Yeah.
that's the point. Like,
Yeah.
we're talking about a guy who's on pace for the Hall of Fame, potentially
He could
challenging the
retire
greatest
today and he's
all
in the
the
Hall
time.
of Fame.
Right, like,
Right.
he's on pace to possibly be considered the greatest quarterback of all time. He's won 3 Super Bowls already. He has been in the Super Bowl like every other year for almost a decade,
Yeah.
and, like, they don't win them all,
Yeah.
And so, like, I have a hard time believing that even if you have Patrick Mahomes and you put him on the Lions, like, I have a hard time believing that it'd be like, oh, we're Super Bowl bound.
I don't think Patrick Mahomes on our team last year wins us a Super Bowl.
I think that if you put Patrick Mahomes on our team last year, it's more impactful than putting Myles Garrett on the team, and that's every metric I've ever seen about football ever, is that he would do more to win a Super Bowl than Myles Garrett would on a 1-for-1 switch out. It's just not. It's almost not even.
I'm thinking specifically. Well, I'm thinking specifically last year, right? Jared Goff played really good last year.
Until the playoffs.
Patrick Mahomes played good, but nothing special last year.
Better than Jared Goff.
In the playoffs, not during the regular season.
I don't care about that part.
I know, I understand. But what I'm saying is, I think the difference between Jared Goff's level of play last year specifically and Mahomes' level of play last year specifically was much smaller than Myles Garrett, and the difference between him and who are we starting?
I don't know, Zadarius Smith.
Zadarius Smith. Well, he'd probably still be on the team, but like what? Muhammad? Al-Qadim Muhammad was the other guy. Like, that's a huge difference, right? So I think I think he makes a bigger impact last year specifically just because of what happened to our defense, right? I just don't think. I don't think Patrick Mahomes in Washington. Washington just rolled us. We were we couldn't stop them. We couldn't. It was just it was a rough game. I'm not sure that Patrick Mahomes makes much difference in that
I don't
situation.
think that Miles Garrett would.
Probably not one player. No.
Right. So like, and that's what we're
Right.
talking about. Is
Yeah.
that like if we're talking about adding, so that in my opinion, there's no one player in the NFL that you can look at and say we're Super Bowl bound. We're the front
Right.
runners for the Super Bowl. It's almost assured that if we don't get injured, we're going to win the Super Bowl. Like
Right.
it doesn't work that way.
Oh yeah. There's no assurance
Right.
whatsoever. There's a luck factor. There's a health factor. There's a bounces factor. Right. So ball ends up on the ground. If you dropped it and it bounces to you, that's great. If it bounces to them, that's a real bummer. And you can't predict that or count on, that kind of stuff. So there's definitely sometimes a better lucky than good aspect to winning championships.
Yeah, it
But
plays
I
a role
think
every
that,
single year.
yeah, it does. But I
So
definitely think that I think our offense is capable of winning a championship. I think our defense is probably capable of winning a championship, but I think adding Garrett to the defense makes that a bigger jump than any other position that we could swap out that is available.
Max Crosby would have audibles out of the JMO pass. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I don't think the Lions are going to win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff as the quarterback. And it's because of what like if you want to go back and watch Washington and Detroit, and it's that reason right there.
Yeah.
There's no better way, there's no better definition or words that I can put together than what it means in the modern NFL to have a player like Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, those type of guys. And like Jaden Daniels is not a top 5 quarterback. He's not a top. He might be a top 10 quarterback this last year, but like I think that Jared Goff has to play mistake-free football for 4 games in a row. So if they get a bye
against
right?
increasingly better players,
Correct.
teams.
So like if they get a bye like they did last year, let's say they get a bye every year for the next 4 seasons, right? So you have to play one divisional round, NFC Championship, Super Bowl, right? That's what those are the games. So can Jared Goff play 3 games of mistake-free football against some of the best teams in your conference and in the NFL? And like I have yet to see it.
Yeah.
He's great in the regular season. Seen that plenty of times, but like
when the pressure's on, he has not.
San Francisco last year, one half was good, one half was not. Washington
Buffalo
this
in the
year,
regular season.
yeah, one half was not.
Big games.
Show me where Jared Goff is going out in like 2 years ago. They went into Baltimore and they got stomped, and Buffalo beat them this year, and it was close, but not really
and
as close as
year.
the score. And last year. So like they beat Kansas City, but I mean, no Travis Kelce, no Chris Jones. Like, here we go. But like
Kadarius Toney, like bouncing the ball volleyball style to our teams for pick sixes, which by the way was the difference in the game, was a pick 6.
Right. Yeah, because they won by 1 point.
I will say in Jared Goff's defense against right exactly in Jared Goff's defense for this past game, our defense gave up so many points. Even as bad as he played, we were a possession behind them. We were a score behind them, even considering how bad he played. So I do think that our offense as a whole can lift us up out of occasional bad plays, not 5, right? But I think if our defense played even remotely well, I think we probably win that game. We lost by a score, just slightly over a score. One of those was a pick 6, which is obviously a bad throw on his part, but also we all could have been tackled and maybe saved a couple points. Maybe they just get a field goal. Maybe not. Maybe they just go down and score. I think our defense cost us the game more than Jared did.
There's no way that's true. There's just no way that's true. So
Jared didn't do well. Like he gave them more opportunities with the ball, right?
Right.
Put our defense in a bad spot 5 times. Those obviously didn't help, but our defense played like garbage. So I do think that if we had 9 guys on defense that didn't play instead of 18, I think it's a totally different ball game.
I got so I know that you're making an argument here, and I know that it's.
And you know me, I'm not one to like.
I don't want to go all in on this, but I'm just I am so fucking sick of the like, oh, the offense was so good, and the only reason that we lost was our defense or whatever. Like, and I know that's not what you were saying, but like Lions fans all year were like, oh, I like, to me, what I look at is, I'm like, listen, if you know your defense sucks, then you have to go out there and you have to score every fucking time, like the other team just did to you. Like I cannot get past this idea that it's like, well, it's not the offense's fault. They're fully healthy. And like, yeah, they may not have scored every single time, but the defense let Washington do it every single time. So it's their fault. Like, nope. Yeah. Like the offense is the best part of this team. They have to go out there and win the game. They know the defense is bad.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get it done. So I mean, like, I'm not saying that it's not the defense's fault, but it's 50-50 if it's 1% either way.
Oh, I agree.
And so like, I am so tired.
And you can't win when your quarterback is the worst graded player on your entire offense, which is the key to victory, right?
I mean, and it was the turnovers, man. Like I don't care if you have the Ravens 2000 defense, and Kenny Two Gloves is your quarterback on the other side. Like if one team, if your offense turned the ball over 5 times, no matter how good your defense is, or whatever. So like, I
gave them 3 extra possessions,
right? So like, think about it like this:
5 technically, but 2 of them were like at the end of halves and games, right?
So let's just rephrase it like this, right? If the defense didn't have to go out and take 5 possessions off of what Washington did,
yes,
what would that look like?
They gave up fewer points per possession than the offense scored.
Right.
The offense scored fewer points per offensive possession than the defense gave up per defensive possession, or you know what I'm saying?
Right. So I mean, like, to me, it is too one-sided. Every time I hear like, well, if the defense would have just played better, we would have won the game.
Yeah.
For fuck's sake.
No, I get that. That was my argument too, right after that game too, right? So, but I am saying, like, if our defense was less hurt, I think our offense is good enough where we can overcome mistakes, and 5 is a lot, right?
Right.
That is abnormal for him. Even when he was in LA and played like crap in the Super Bowl when the game was big, he didn't have 5 turnovers. He just played like crap. Couldn't complete passes, sacks, couldn't avoid them, that kind of stuff. So like, I don't think it's it was just a perfect storm. Bad defense, lots of injuries, and he had the worst game of his season all at once.
So here's the other part of this. Like, okay, so the Lions trade for Myles Garrett, right?
Yep.
Okay. Let's say the defense has 10 injuries as opposed to 18 or whatever. How many injuries on defense would it take to be like, Eric Decker has to miss 4 games in a row during the playoffs? Taylor Decker. Fuck. All right. So like,
I wasn't even going to say it.
Someday, Taylor Decker is out for the playoffs and the Super Bowl. What does that loss look like to make up the difference when, like, in defensive players? Because to me, it's like 5 guys. Like, if you lose one dude off the offensive line, if you lose Sam Laporta, how many defensive players can be hurt before it equals out to what Sam Laporta does on offense? Yeah. To me, the scales are so swingy.
Yeah.
The offense is they missed David Montgomery for a little while last year on offense. That's it.
Yeah.
We
were super lucky on offense, injury-wise.
So if you trade for Myles Garrett and Penei Sewell goes down, what are we talking about? I mean, like, that's the thing. It's like you have to trade for Myles Garrett and then have no one get hurt.
Yeah.
And then maybe, your odds get to the point where it's like, well,
Yeah.
you're probably in the Super Bowl. Listen,
Well, I mean,
Myles
look at
Garrett's going to help
Philly.
any team he plays for.
Yeah. Yeah, and look at Philly. I think they only had 3 players on IR when they played in the Super Bowl. It's really they were very, very fortunate on the health side of things.
I like Fan Man's post here. Like, of course you can, even if unlikely handfuls of worse quarterbacks have won titles. I would love to challenge this assertion. So, like, here's what I will say: has a quarterback in the current CBA worse than Jared Goff won a Super Bowl? So that's 2011.
Joe Flacco.
At the time,
and I would say that he's not necessarily worse. I'd say he's about the same.
Let's have this be the last thing that we do today.
Yep. Good, because I have to go to the bathroom.
I understand.
My bladder's going, Mike, let's get this going.
I understand. Hang on one second. Winners since 2011. Or if Super Bowl winners by year. That's perfect. Okay, so 2011. Cowboys. No, wait. Green Bay beat Pittsburgh. So that's Aaron Rodgers. 2012. Giants beat New England. That's Eli Manning. Okay, here's the Joe Flacco one. Baltimore beat San Francisco in 2013. Seattle, Russell Wilson beat Denver. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Philadelphia. Okay, so here's another one. So this was the year that Carson Wentz played the best year of his career, and then Nick Foles got them over the hump in 2018. So if you want to say Carson Wentz or Nick Foles, I'm with you.
Let's be real though. Carson Wentz was he got MVP votes.
Yeah, he had an MVP caliber year.
Yes, he wasn't some scrub.
Right, exactly. Best year that he had in his career. Then we had Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. So on this list, you've got Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz, maybe Eli Manning. Who else? Joe Flacco. So is Jared Goff the 5th worst quarterback in the modern era to challenge for a Super Bowl? Goff had MVP votes. Come on,
he did not have MVP votes.
Did he? He might.
No, he had 0.
Yeah, that one.
Final votes, I believe.
Okay, so he says Flacco and Foles were the first 2 that he thought of. Okay, so you think Goff is better than Eli? I don't.
Yeah,
because Eli Manning came up huge in big games, and Jared Goff has not. So I don't care about regular season nonsense.
I think Goff has more arm talent than Eli did, but I don't think he put it. Yeah, I'll say, but he didn't put it to use at the appropriate times.
Gotcha. So I mean, like, that's just it. Is that like in the last 14 years, the Lions
even going back further, right? Going back to 2002, Brad Johnson is the one that everybody says, oh, they did have a generationally good defense. Brad Johnson, and where's Trent Dilfer? He was further back, wasn't he?
He's 2 years, 2000.
Yeah. So this is 2 decades ago, and the NFL has changed a touch in the last 2 decades, right?
That's it. Like,
back in this time, we actually had running backs winning MVPs back then.
Right. And you had defenses that could win games.
Right.
That's all gone.
So, yeah. When was I'm trying to think when the last time, or when was the first time since Dan Marino threw for 5,000 yards? When did that start becoming a thing?
I would say Drew Brees or Tom Brady.
Yeah, it would have been right in this area.
Because Brady and Manning each had like one had a 50 touchdown season, and the next year the other one did. Like, that was when like passing really took off.
Yeah, and Stafford did it the year after, right? So Stafford did it in 2011, I think. So probably 09.
I'm not saying it's impossible. Anyway, I'm just betting on the outcome that he won't win a Super Bowl for the Lions. And my reasoning is he does not add the kind of like percentage points on the margins that like a big armed mobile quarterback that everyone in the NFL is trying to get their hands on nowadays provides. And like you are paying him as if he is one of those players. And in my opinion, he has not showed up and is not worth that money at any point in his career for when he has had to play in big games. So
just like Kirk Cousins.
Right. So like
he's played well and
right.
he has talent, but there's a reason why, they call him Sunday at 1,
right.
1 o'clock, 1 p.m. merchant or whatever. Like if on your Sunday night for your prime time, Kirk Cousins is a derogatory statement and not something that you're excited about.
So like I think Jared Goff is playing as well as Jared Goff has ever played football. Yep. Clearly, the Lions think that he is the right man, the right leader for the way they want the offense to run. I'm not disputing any of that. Like, and this is probably the best spot in the entire NFL for Jared Goff is in Detroit.
Yep.
And I think that when the Lions, when you basically have to say we're losing the quarterback battle on an individual basis to like talent,
yep,
and then the rest of your team has to make up for it, that is a huge ask. And so like,
because that's when injuries and luck happen, right? Like, Carlton who was it that broke their arm? Was it Meek Robertson, right?
Yeah.
Second play of the game.
Yeah.
Well, shit.
Yeah.
Right?
That's no good.
So that kind of stuff happens, bounces happen, tipped balls happen, and you have to make sure that doesn't happen to make up the difference between the most important players on each team when you have that as a deficit.
Yeah. So to me, Jared Goff is is a breed of quarterback that is probably will be out of the NFL in the next 5 years. I cannot imagine a primary pocket passer. The next closest guy to Jared Goff that's like playing at an elite level is Joe Burrow. Like Joe Burrow doesn't run. Joe Burrow's not.
He can though. He just doesn't.
I guess he could. I mean, but like you're not worried that Joe Burrow's beating you with his legs.
Right. Yeah.
Like he's going to move around in the pocket.
I'd say Justin Herbert's a little bit that way too.
Yeah, okay.
But both of them, I think, have better arm talent.
Their arms are way better.
Right? Yeah.
Listen, accuracy, I'm not saying that Jared Goff can't throw a 60-yard pass. We saw him do it a couple of times this year. But like he had better be able to set his feet, have no one in his face, and he's got to be able to follow through on it. And it's not just like this. Like
Patrick Mahomes usually that guy's got to have a foot, a couple steps on their other guy, just because he may need to adjust his speed.
So that's why, so when we're talking about like these roster moves and like we're talking about depth, like I think that depth is more important for the Detroit Lions to weather the luck, the injuries, and to make up that difference in straight up talent that you have at, and like Detroit probably has better talent now at a lot of positions, right tackle, wide receiver, edge rusher, like safety, like they have spots. Like we have all pros on this
team.
Running back, exactly. Like Jahmyr Gibbs might just be a monster next season.
I think next season he will be the best running back in the NFL.
It's very possible because like I can't imagine anything less than like a 60-40 split between Gibbs and then Montgomery. So like he just played too well this year to warrant a 50-50 division of snaps. So but it's like what we saw like the Giants GM say, like, do we really want a $40 million quarterback handing off to a $12 million running back? And it's like with Jared Goff, like that's probably the path to victory, unfortunately, because it limits the problems that he can have. So, and that's the thing, like he's here to not make mistakes. And he does a really good job of that 17 out of 20 games of the year.
Yeah, I'd say most of the time. And no one's going to be perfect. Like I don't think anybody expects him to have 0 interceptions during a season, right?
No.
You're going to make mistakes. Practical. Tips happen, misreads happen, all that kind of stuff. And he played pretty well. He had a 5 interception game against Houston, and that was half of it for the season. I think he only had 11 total, 9 total, something like that. And half of them were in that one game. And like, I'd rather have everything just really go really shitty for one game and have the rest be, for the most part, mistake free and go, all right, that one we're just going to plan on not winning. And we ended up winning it anyway, which is kind of bonkers. But All right, Drew. We have been on for almost 2 hours.
I did my best, Mike.
I know, but it was too much fun. We had
It
we
was a
had
lot of fun.
some good comments in the chat, and there was a lot to
A
talk
lot of good
about
questions.
with roster mocking. So, with that said, we will catch you. Oh, yeah, do the whole like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff on our YouTube.
And
Share
next
it
week
out.
we have
Next week.
our guest mock draft.
Is it next week? Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
first week of March.
Yep. Yep. So that'll be fun. We will see you all then. Take care.
Bye, guys.